Wow, there are a lot of people here. They didn't have this many people in rehearsal. Would everyone mind for a second? Just please don't look at me for a second so I can just kind of get acquainted to being up here. If you don't mind, just please kind of look away, look down. Seriously, there's a lot of you. This is hard. I really appreciate how accommodating some of you are to this absolutely ridiculous request. Empathy is something that, as much as it's so important to the development of our kids, it's not everything. I saw many of you look around, look away, work with me. Fantastic, I appreciate that. But there's another side of this coin. Because we focus on empathy so much with our kids, and as they grow up, that they tend to expect it once they graduate high school. Because the focus on empathy has really been about performance. Kids are gonna perform really well if they just feel good. Everyone's gotta feel good all the time. Does the real world care how you feel? Does the real world care? I guarantee you, everybody in this room has had a hardship. And I guarantee you that you've run into people who will empathize with you. And I also guarantee that you've run into people who really don't care, and they say that you still have to meet the obligations and expectations that are in front of you. So what we're doing is programming kids to grow up and then enter a world where everything's supposed to feel good, and then it doesn't. Because we're not teaching them the other side of the coin, which is grit, perseverance. Because success does not come instantly. Success is not a feel-good process. Success comes with many failures. It's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back at best. So we continue to perpetuate this idea that let's just keep feeling good. As long as we keep feeling good, everything will be great. It doesn't work that way. Life is not instant, but we're creating it, and we're selling this idea that that's what kids should expect as they get older. There was a great study that was done in the 70s from Stanford University. It's called the marshmallow experiment. Really cool study. Essentially what the researchers did was they took kids and they put them in a room, kindergarten age, and they sat them down and they put a marshmallow in front of them. And the researcher said, I'm gonna leave the room, and while I'm gone, you could eat the marshmallow. But if you don't eat the marshmallow, you'll get more marshmallows. Researchers would leave the room, and some kids ate the marshmallows. Other kids waited and got more marshmallows, okay? But what was really cool about the study is that they followed these kids for 30 years to see, does it make a difference? And what they found was, it does. Kids who were able to wait to get more marshmallows, higher SAT scores, lower instances of obesity, less issues with substance use. Delayed gratification to success is a major component, and we don't teach it. We teach instant. And what we see now, especially in our culture, millennials get a really bad rap, and I used to really be right on the front line with that hammer hitting them. But they're kind of part of this transitional generation between the industrial and the informational age. They're really kind of in this middle line, because culture in and of itself would teach delayed gratification. It would teach patience. Case in point, when I was growing up, and if I wanted to go out with my friends on a Saturday night, but my parents said, you know what, you're gonna go out with us Saturday during the day. Well, I had to wait. I had to wait till I got home to call my friends. And then that was only half the equation. I also had to hope that they were home to pick up the phone. And then it was like a jackpot when one of your friends got an answering machine, because then they could actually call you back to eliminate some of the waiting, because you wouldn't keep perpetually calling, right? Culture embedded waiting. But now we all have phones. No one really thinks twice about how to make a plan with somebody. You could tweet them, post it, text it, call them, right? You could do whatever you want to do, all sitting right here. There's no waiting. Everything can be instant. And this instant process is just infusing ourselves into, into our culture and our life. I see it quite a bit when it comes to the college process and what's going to happen with kids after high school. Because what we've done is now take this idea of instant success and everything has to happen so smoothly and everyone feels so great. But now we're going to apply it to schools. And we're going to say, you know what? You have to get into the best school that you can. Because you know what? If you do, you will be successful quickly. If you don't, you are potentially in line for a lifetime of suffering. That's it. Those are the options. So what happens? I like to call it the combination lock. What happens is kids start doing things that they don't really want to do. For example, kids really want to shoot for that, what they call a reach school, right? Kids shoot for it. But they look at what they've done and they say, this isn't good enough. And if I can get into this school, my life is set. So you know what? I don't like charity. But you know what? I'm going to go volunteer at a food pantry, not because I really care about the hungry people, but really because it'll look good on this piece of paper eventually for the person who's going to read it. And I really don't like the arts, but you know what? Let me just play piano or something so I can show that I'm well-rounded, right? I'm not just this one person. And they do this because there's really this belief system that these things really will matter. But do they? There was a great study that was done between Princeton University and the Mathematica Institute. And what they did was they took two groups of people. One group graduated from what would be considered an elite universities, the Ivy Leagues, the Dukes, the Stanfords, et cetera. And then they had another group that graduated from non-elite universities. And they said, you know what, let's try to figure out how much more someone would earn over the course of their lifetime if they went to an elite school versus a non-elite school. And what they concluded was that if you went to an elite school, you can figure that you're gonna earn about 7% more over the course of your lifetime than those who didn't. Okay, and you say, you probably say, that's it, because you're paying so much, right? But 7% made sense. But then what the researchers did is that they made an adjustment. And what they found was that if you look at the number of kids who went to a non-elite school, but applied and did not attend an elite school, the earnings difference disappeared. It disappeared. And the researchers said that essentially what happens is that at a certain point, it's the determination and motivation and perseverance of the kids themselves that determine their success, not the actual school that they attend. Further, they concluded that the average SAT score of a school that a student does not attend is more than twice as great a predictor of future earnings than the average SAT score of the school they actually attend. So let me say that again. The average SAT score of the schools that they don't attend are more than twice as great a predictor of future earnings than the ones they actually attend. This includes Ivy League schools. So what we're finding is that as much as on one hand, we're priming kids on these young levels to say, hey, let's feel good. Everyone's got to be successful. Everyone's got to be great. Because everything's got to be instantly fantastic. It doesn't line up on the other side. Another study, everyone, as schools, especially locally, focus on STEM, which is incredibly important, right? Science, technology, engineering, math. A huge push to focus on that. But let's look at this study for a second. So there's a small school in upstate New York called Hartwick College. Small school. What the researchers did is they broke it down, broke their STEM, their kids majoring in STEM programs down into 3 tiers. And they broke it down based upon the math SAT scores only. So tier 1 had an average math SAT score of 569. Tier 2 had an average math of 472. Tier 3, 407. This is the graduation rates for each tier. 55% of the tier 1 graduated, 27% of tier 2, about 18% of tier 3. You'd say, okay, that makes some sense, right? I mean, it kind of should fall down that way. But then let's compare this now to another school that we all know and I think would find respectable. Harvard. Harvard has a tier 1 that's incredibly high with a 753 average math score at 800, tier 2 at 674, tier 3 at 581. Well, let's look at their graduation rates for these STEM programs. Kind of similar, don't you think? So when you pull this all together, that you see that the tier 1s at both schools essentially graduate at the same rate. The tier 2s at both schools essentially graduate at the same rate. The tier 3s at both schools essentially graduate at the same rate. You'll also notice, though, that the scores in and of themselves are a lot higher. I mean, the tier 3 score at Harvard is higher than the tier 1 score at Hartwick. So why aren't we graduating the same percentage of kids? The answer? This is not deep. I wish it was deep. It's not deep. The answer, the researchers concluded, is that the kids in those tier 3s just felt dumb. They just felt dumb relative to the people around them. So if you were a tier 3 at Harvard or a tier 3 at Hartwick, the odds were against you from the beginning. They felt dumb because they've been primed with instant gratifications and everything being great and everything feeling good and we got to get into the best school. But you know what? Those tier 3 kids at Harvard who in their minds worked hard to get there set themselves up more for failure than if they didn't get in. Because what researchers concluded in this is that there's a 2% increased likelihood of graduating with a STEM degree for every 10-point average decrease in university SAT score. Okay, 2% more likely to graduate with a 10-point decrease in average SAT score. So what does that mean essentially here? It essentially means that the odds of graduating with a STEM degree, you have a 38% greater chance of graduating with a STEM degree if you attended Hartwick versus Harvard. Simply because you have a higher likelihood of being a part more of people that you will be able to say, I don't feel so stupid. But why are we doing that to ourselves? It seems like if we're gonna have kids attend these schools and we're gonna pay all this money and someone's gonna be on the hook for the bill to go, we should at least be able to really to help them feel secure in going and feel comfortable in the struggle. Because success is not linear. Success is hard. It's slow, it's deliberate. People are gonna make mistakes, but we are not preparing kids to make mistakes. We're preparing them for success. But when success doesn't happen as quickly as they want, they bail, hence the tier 3. They see all these other people doing all these other things and they say, you know what, I'm out, I'm done, I can't do this. Because we're not spending the time pushing them to really develop and focus on the process. Because what has happened, especially now, is that everything focuses on, especially educationally, it's outcomes-based. Have to hit this score, this grade, everything is outcomes-based, outcomes-based. There's not a focus on a process. And the process is where the meat of everything occurs. The process is where those failures create success. But if all we're gonna do is focus on the outcomes, then we're all missing the point. Because grit and success is hard. It's hard because all of us here know as adults how hard life can be. Yet, for some whatever reason, culturally, we're teaching our kids the opposite. We're teaching them everything's great. It's always gonna be great. Let's take care, let's do all these great things. And yes, it's fantastic. I think people should always be encouraged and feel good and all those things, but we can't ignore the other side of the coin, which is things are hard. So at what point are we gonna be able to say, we have to step back and let them deal with their struggles? And that's where we have to ask ourselves as parents and community members is, how comfortable are we watching our kids struggle? Can we handle it? Can we handle watching our kids fight through something that we know is kind of gut-wrenching, but we have to let it go for them to work out their own problems because that's what's gonna help them in 10 or 15 years, not me running in and saving them? That's our problem. And the question I'd leave you with is, when you look at the kids around you in your lives, when they have a hardship, when they have a hard time, in the end, do you want them to look for an arm to be put around them? Or do you want them to look deep down inside and try again with grit? Thank you.